I saw a microbiologist today. He was much bigger than I expected. Hey kids, Adam here. Today, I'm going to revisit the Tukan plugins that I looked at in my last video. For those of you who haven't seen the video, I'll put a card. Take a look at that. This is going to be kind of a follow-on to that video, and it may not make a lot of sense if you haven't seen that first one. In that video, in the Tukan plugins, I was talking about the plugins called Tukan plugins from Tukan Studios. You know what? This was a lot of work last time. So let me just get this out of the way right now. Bear with me. Tukan, 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 Tukan. All right, now that we got out of that way, these plugins were released by John Matthews recently within the last few months. They've just kind of blown up the Reaper scene, and he's very responsive and very good at coming up with updates on these. He is a music engineer and not a programmer, so it was pretty impressive he was able to come up with these and build these in the short time that he was able to. I think he only moved over to Reaper last year, September, October, something like that. So in the last video, there were a couple things that I didn't really understand with the plugins. There was a bug in one of them. There was one that didn't work the way I expected it would. And I think I gave one disservice and didn't really look at it the way I should have. So what I decided to do is do a follow-up to that. I've been in contact with John Matthews, who's the owner of the Tukan plugins and the creator. And over on our unofficial Reaper users group Discord, link in the description for that invite for that Discord server. He was able to reply and actually fixed a couple things and answered some questions like right during our discussion that we were looking at. He did come out with some fixes recently on two of the things that I was looking at in that video. And I want to take a look at some of these things a little bit further. I think the fact that he was so responsive deserves somebody else's eyes on this. So let's head over to Reaper and we'll take a look. All right, here on Reaper, same project from the last time. This was from my video when I was leaving Waves and going either to T-Rex or Analog Obsession that I used for that video. What you want to do first is you want to go to the extensions menu up here, go to Repack and do Synchronize Packages. And since I haven't done it yet, you'll be able to see what this looks like here. Goes through all the Repack plugins that are in there, all the files for the Repack plugins, and then gives you this kind of a summary of what was upgraded. So we can see, you know, compressor was from 1.1.1 to 1.1.3, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, all the way down. That's what was changed. So the first thing, let me bring up just a random plugin here. You can bring them up by typing in Tukan. Let's bring up the Exciter+Sub. This is one that I kind of looked at. One of the things that I said I didn't know how to do, there are actually two things. One, because there is no number display, there's a dial and you can see the numbers on the dial, but most plugins you can actually see the numbers somewhere. And I said my OCD went crazy, so I didn't really know how to get this back to centered. What you can do is you can hold on the control or imagine command on the Mac, if these even work on a Mac. I don't have a Mac. I kind of like Big Macs, but I don't really like Mac computers. But if you hold on control, click on this dial, it does reset back to 0. And it should do that on everyone. It should reset back to the original spot. So this original spot is at probably 60 or so. For mix percentage, it's probably 225. Frequency, if I move it all the way down to 10 here, and then control click, it'll go all the way back. The other thing I said was when you're moving these, the response is really, really fast. And normally in a Reaper plugin, you can hold on control and it'll be a slower movement. But in this plugins, it's shift. So if you hold down shift, now it's a very, very slow movement. Actually, you have to move the mouse pretty far in order to get it to move, as opposed to just, you know, what it does normally. So those are two great things. Thank you, John, for letting you know about those. I'm an IT engineer, so I'm not big on manuals. I'm big on putzing and breaking stuff and then learning it that way. So that's probably something that I missed. But that was one thing that I thought was really great. The next one I want to look at, let's look at the pull tech right away. So if I bring up my master fader here, I'm using here, I have the RareSE by Analog Obsessions, and I want to add the Tukan, which is the EQT1A. So I'll do the same thing that I did before, kind of move this out, move this up here under it, uncheck it, and then control click so I can go back and forth. So I'm going to set this to pretty much the same settings, and we'll see what it sounds like. So this is about 2, that's about 2, we're at 30 hertz for that. Boost is up here a little over 6. Bandwidth is all the way to sharp. Frequency here is at 12. Attenuation is 0. And even though I'm not using the attenuation selector, I'll put this at 5. Let's just play this part of the song, go back and forth. This is actually, I mean, since you saw me update these, this is the first time I'm looking at this. I wanted to have this be kind of a pure test so that I wasn't putzing with anything. I can hear this right away. And we'll see what it sounds like. Here we go. The Analog Obsessions first.
Oh, everything will be alright. Everything will be alright. Everything will be alright. Let go and let go.
Now you will, if you saw my video on leaving waves, you'll notice that when I moved from the waves to the T-Racks, to the Analog Obsession, this boost for the high frequencies was very different between the three. The bass was almost the same, but the boost for the high frequencies was very different. I only had this at about 3, and I had to boost this up to about 6 to meet the same brightness level of the waves. I think this one might be closer to what the waves was. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm just gonna take this and bump it all the way down to 0 for both. And we'll see what it looks like here.
Oh, everything will be alright. Everything will be alright. Everything will be alright. Let go and let go.
Well done, John. This is very, very, very close. And in fact, I think on the RareSE from Analog Obsessions, if I put the boost up just a little bit, it would be more. I think the Tukan's just a little bit brighter, but the bass like falls right in line with what I would expect it to be. Now, granted, I don't have these exactly on the exact same numbers here. They're really close, but it's much more in line than what I thought it was. Before, the mids were kind of scooped and well, it wasn't really the right EQ curve, but I think this sounds much better and much closer to what I would expect a Pultec to be. So yeah, well done, John. I think I'm going to use this one on my next mix and see what it's like, see how it works, and we'll go, we'll take a look at that. I also sometimes use it on the kick. I'm not using on the kick in this song, so if I use it on the kick in the future, I will, and actually that might be, what I just said might be a foreshadow of something that's coming. Keep that in the back of your minds, kids. But yeah, so let's move on to the next plugin, which is the LA2A. All right, so I use the LA2A on guitars and some keyboards, but we'll look at it on distorted guitars here. There was a bug in the previous version that when you would move the peak meter or the gain reduction meter, and it wouldn't do anything until you hit the gain, and then it like overdid it. And John said there was a bug in there that basically was waiting for the gain to do it in order to trigger it. So if we go in here and add the LA1A plugin, and I don't even really have to do much. I'll just play it and kind of move this around. You'll see that it just works as expected. I'll try it again just to make sure it's not a fluke. I'll add this in here. And that works exactly like I would expect it to. The sound on this was very, very close. In fact, almost indistinguishable to the Analog Obsession LALA, which is the same piece of hardware. So I was expecting this to not be a big deal. So again, great job, John. Glad you're able to get this to work. Let's go on to the next one. In my last video for the Exciter, so I don't think I really gave it a fair comparison because I wasn't really comparing an exciter to an exciter. So what I did is I brought up my final mix for this song right before mastering, and I'm going to bring up the drums exciter channel. And you'll notice that I'm using the Aphex vintage exciter from Waves. When I moved to T-Rex didn't really have an exciter plugin. And in my research and doing some Googling and some testing around, I found a lot of people are using like the Mag 3 or Mag 4 or whatever EQ it is. And I have the Lofticus plugin, which is a free plugin, which has an air band. People are using that as an exciter. Technically, that's an EQ and it's not an exciter. It doesn't add harmonic frequencies as much as it does just actual frequencies. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to compare this to the original. And in the last video, I compared it to this Lofticus plugin. I don't think that was fair. So let's bring in this Exciter+Sub. And we'll kind of do the same thing we've been doing here with everything else. I don't know exactly what frequencies I was using or what the vintage exciter was. It says 4.74 here. I don't really know what that means in comparison to this plugin. I will turn off the fat bottom part and I'll just go for the exciter. And you know what? Let me just leave it there. What I'll probably have to do is adjust the mix because right now it's at 0. I'll probably have to tune it in a little bit. I'm going to go back and forth between the vintage exciter and the Tukan one, and we'll see what it sounds like here. And same part in the chorus that I've been doing for everything. I think that's really close. I would have to screw around with the frequency a little bit more and not, it's probably too much for just in this video. But I think this is where I'm going to go for my exciter. And I'm really only using it to enhance things like overheads. I use it in my vocal chain. In fact, I'll put this up here for how to get vocals to cut through the mix with the Vox Air trick. I use it in that channel. I use it every once in a while. I use it somewhere else. It works great on overheads. It works great as a just a send for my entire drum kit. So I think that one is great. I think this is a much better comparison to what I was doing with the other, just the Lofticus plugin with just the EQ band. So let's take a look at one plugin that I didn't look at, and actually it's a new plugin that was just released recently in this bundle. And I think John's just going to keep going here. He's going to find either pieces of hardware or other plugins that he likes to do, and he's going to build them into these Reaper plugins. And so far, he's only asked for some Patreon donations. So I do plan on doing that. I haven't done that yet because I kind of forgot, but I will be doing that soon. But let's take a look at one more plugin. I wanted to take a look at this one because I'm in kind of dire need for this type of plugin. All right, this project is the song Information by the band Too Far Down. I was in this band just about 20 years ago. We released this song a little bit over 20 years ago, and I did it in a remix for a video I'll put up here. These lead vocals are very sibilant. And in fact, let me just take all the processing is on here except for the Deesser.
She said she wants to stay, yeah.
I mean, that line right there is just kind of brutal. And without a Deesser, now let's put wave sibilance on here.
She said she wants to stay, yeah.
It really does tame it. But let's see if there's anything else we can do. There is a new plugin called the Deesser. And it looks very, very simple. There's a threshold, there's a key in and a key out, which are the range of the frequencies. And then there's either a key or normal. Normal is how the effect does. Key is essentially the monitoring effect, or you're listening to what it's taking out. So I'm just gonna put this line. You guys are gonna be sick of hearing this line, but I'm gonna play this line over and over again and kind of just dial this in and see what I can get it to do here.
She said she wants to stay, yeah. She said she wants to stay, yeah.
So we'll try without it.
She said she wants to stay, yeah.
Very sibilant, and we'll try with it.
She said she wants to stay, yeah.
It really cuts down on the S's. I haven't really dialed it in. I just did a little bit of a frequency change, dialed the threshold back a lot. But this is one of the problems that I've had going to these plugins is I didn't really have a good de-esser. Now there is an Analog Obsessions de-esser that just came out that I haven't had a chance to look at. But for starters, I'm going to use this Tukan de-esser. I think it sounds really great, and I think it's really easy to use. For me, I'm all about simplicity. Like, I love 2-knob compressors, and this is 3-knob and a switch de-esser. So this is going to be my go-to from now on. All right, I'm back in this first project. I wanted to look at one more because I don't think I gave it a correct review last time. There is a VU meter on here. It is the MCP meter. It does come in a little weird, and there's no way to resize it. And that was one of the things that I really was hoping to get. In fact, John, I'm going to send you a link here. Hopefully you can somehow figure out a way to resize these things, even if for now it's just like stretching out the images so that we can see them at 50% or 100% bigger, which is what Waves does for their resizing. So if you notice when I play this song, I have MV Meter 2 here by TBProAudio. It's a free MV or a VU meter plugin. You'll notice when I play it, peaking a little bit above -1, hovering around -5, -3, somewhere in there. But when I play this up here, it's not doing anything. You'll notice there's this little 0 up here. If you hold down the shift button and click on this, you'll get 6, 12, 18, 24, and back to 0. If you look at the MV meter, you'll notice I have this set at kind of a standard VU meter setting, which is -18. So I bet if I took this up to 18 and now play it, and now the meters look much better in sync. Now, one of the cool things about these plugins is that they have a view in your MCP mode. MCP is the mixer control panel, or this whole thing down here in Reaper. So if you hit this plus button here and you go down to show embedded UI in MCP, and then you scroll down in your list of plugins here, you'll see, and let me close this down, you'll see that the MV meter shows up in here. Now the graphic size looks really cool. You can do this at any channel. And when I play it, it's a live view of the meter in my mix control panel. I haven't used any of these. This is a new feature in Reaper at least a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, maybe even longer, where you can show certain UIs of certain plugins in the control panel. You can actually show it in the TCP, which is the track control panel up here, your tracks vertically. But it hasn't really, I haven't really had a use for it. I could see leaving this on and kind of using it as a meter, even though I only really use these view meters for spot checking. This could be, more of an analog console view. So I thought that was pretty cool. I want to do one more thing. Let me redo some things, and we'll be back in a second. All right, one of the things that I did not do when I looked at the Tukan plugins previously is a CPU comparison. I did that in my Waves to T-Rex and Analog Obsession. I did it especially when I was working on the SSL, which kind of sparked this whole journey of mine on plugins. What I didn't do is I didn't do it on the Tukan at all. I would expect them, because they are Reaper plugins, JS plugins, that they would be lower on CPU resources. But I haven't really tested this out. So I'm in this in Reaper with this same little Ditty bass thingy that I've played for you before. Blah, 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 blah. Let me put a pull tech on it, and I'm going to use we'll compare these to the Analog Obsessions. And I'll just do the same boost and attenuation trick at 30. Everything else will just leave the same. That should be fine. I'm going to add in the LALA, which is the LA2A, just a little bit of compression, and get the gain level to match. That sounds good. Now I want to take this volume all the way down so it doesn't kill us. -43 is fine. And I want to just copy and paste a number of these out. Copy and paste speed is very fast. There's no delay. And there's 25 of them. We'll go out to 100 of these, and I'll bring up the performance meter and just kind of take a look at the CPU. $25 to 30%. Averages probably, I'll say 25-ish, even though it's all over the place. Let's try the same thing with the Tukan plugins. I'll skip all the copying and pasting, and we'll be back. Okay, so here we are with 100 tracks, same song. I put the same 2 plugins on, the Pultec and then the LA1A. I set up a little bit of gain reduction, and then we'll just play it here. You gotta trust me that the settings are, it's about the same, 2 to 3 dB gain reduction, and let's just play it, see what happens. Significantly less CPU usage. There is sitting at between 10 and 20, an average of 15. Math, kids, stay in school. I think it performed pretty much the same copying and pasting. And it's, you know, as someone said, in fact, YouTube automatically blocked one of the comments from my Waves video saying, "You don't need 100 tracks to make a song, idiot." Okay, thank you, sir. Yes, sure. You're wrong, as a matter of fact, because I think if you ask like a lot of EDM and dance, electronic, you know, techno, and I know there's 1,000 different genres in what I'm calling that. Some of them use 300, 400, 500 tracks in their songs. So you could use 100 tracks to make a song. You in your basement playing guitar with programmed drums probably don't need 100 tracks, but sometimes you do need a lot of tracks. I had one track, I had 42 vocal tracks, because I'm using a lot of backgrounds and a lot of pan things, a lot of stereo things. So the trick is you can't just put one thing on, look at the CPU meter and say, oh, well, this is using 0.7 or 0.07, but the other one is using 0.06, so that's obviously better. You have to extrapolate that across a number of tracks, so there's actually a measurable amount of CPU usage to be able to determine how things act and how things compare to each other. All right, so that is my Tukan Revisited video. John Matthews, thank you very much for these updates and talking to me and working through some of the things that I was working on. Thanks big time for the Pultec enhancement. Really appreciate what you've done there and redoing the EQ curve and everything. I'll probably feature some of these plugins in future videos. I'll look at them when they come out. I did get one kind of weird comment today or the other day, and I won't read it, but it's basically said that these things are kind of like a scam because he artificially increases the output and blah, blah, blah. They don't sound like that. I think I've disproven that. I haven't really had to play with the output levels on these things at all, other than compressors where when you're reducing gain, you have to increase the output to level match. I haven't run into that in these. I don't know which ones he's using. I know the Lexicon, the reverb plugin is very, very detailed, and there are a lot of different features and a lot of different sounds in there. I will probably play with that at some point in the future. I'm not a big reverb guy. I tend to find one reverb that I like to go with and just kind of set it and forget it, and just add different levels when I'm mixing a song. But maybe I'll look into that in the future. Until then, I think these plugins are a really good feature set for anyone who wants to look at mixing and doesn't want to spend money on a bundle, but still wants something outside of the standard built-in plugins, especially if you're looking for, you know, the analog flavor and the analog goodness, as we should say, in your plugin usage that maybe some of the built-in Reapers and the built-in JS plugins don't have. They're free. It's a great price. And but I do recommend going over to his Patreon page and sending him a little donation. It's not much. I think his standard yearly one was like $5 a month or something like that. Just take one less Starbucks a week or, you know, whatever, and pay for that. So leave me a comment. Let me know what you think of these. I like the communication, even if it's a negative comment. I'm actually going to go reply to that guy's right now and see what he thinks of some of the changes, and we'll see what comes of that. Until next time, comment, subscribe, and like, and the bell thing, and turn yourself about left. No, that's something else. I guess that's all I got. Until next video, have yourselves an amazing week. I also use it on the kick drum. In fact, let's we didn't look at this in the last video, but let's look at the kick here. If I solo this out, I'm not using it on the kick actually. So if we go in here and we add the what the hell is this thing called?